witnessing the launch of grunge. October 6, 1991, the Rip magazine party at the Hollywood Palladium. I was there. I saw it. Now, I was playing, at the time in a Sunset Strip band, and it was probably around this time. The band was called Boy Elroy, and I did not choose that name. It was given to us. I even, I reached out to, because here's how it went down. We had a manager I've talked about before, and we had a booking agent. And we had the name Shock and the Night and Day Horns. Shock had already been taken. That name was taken by a band before us. It was kind of like a disco band or something. But they had the legal rights to the name. So we got a cease and desist order because we were booking gigs on the Strip with that name. And so, we had to choose a name, and we just could not come up with a name. Everything we would come up with, it was like, no, it's like Sebastian Bach and Ted Nugent and, those guys in that super group on VH1 and Savage Animal, bro, Savage Animal. We could not come up with a name. So the manager and booking agent come in and they say, we've booked you guys on a gig, a warm-up show, and here's the gig. And they hand us like this little ad or that was going to run in the magazine or something, and it said, his boy Elroy at, I don't know where the gig was booked, Gazzari's it wasn't Gazzari's, it was maybe, Exposure 54 or something like that. And man, I saw that name and I just hit the roof. I'm like, what is and man, I hated that name and at least said, well, it's abbreviated to Boy Elroy, and at least it's not his boy Elroy, And now, many years later, on Facebook, I found the booking agent and I said, I said in a post, I tagged her and I said, this was a name that we didn't choose. The booking agent and the manager chose this name, and then we just ended up running with it because they booked gigs. So she said, oh, I would never choose one of my clients' names. And, I would never do that. And, that's not correct. I'm thinking, I sat there in the room and you guys presented us with the name and I had no choice in the matter. So you can, maybe you realize now that wasn't really a cool thing to pick out a band's name and go, here's your name. But that's how it went down. So we were playing, this is like 1991. We're playing the Strip. We have no idea about Seattle or any of that. And I'd heard about Pearl Jam at the time, and Man in the Box, Alice in Chains had come out, and so I was aware that stuff was going on. I was unaware that LA was done, that it was done, and you would get labeled, hair band and all of this stuff. But October 6, 1991, Rip magazine party. And we would often get, from our booking agent or from, somebody, on our team would say, hey, you guys want free passes to the Rip magazine party? And you would say, oh, yeah. Well, who's playing? And they said, well, and they named, Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Temple of the Dog. I don't know if Temple of the Dog was named on the ticket, but Alice in Chains and Spinal Tap. I was like, Spinal Tap, I'm there. Because Spinal Tap, man, I was a huge fan of that movie. I thought it was hilarious. I can quote that movie all day, every day. You know, you could say I've got a nodule haircut. I've always had the, you know, when my hair is, you know, medium length, I usually go in and say, I like my hair to look like Jeff Beck, if you could. Please make my hair look like Jeff Beck. So, you know, if I've got to go play a gig, I would put a little spritz right here. And then all of a sudden, I'm Nigel. And it's not your job to be as confused as Nigel. So I hear Spinal Tap's on the bill, and I'm like, dude, I'm there. I've got to see this. So I didn't know a ton about the other bands. I knew, you know, I'd heard of them, and I didn't really put two and two together that this party was the launch of grunge in Hollywood. And, I had no idea that this was, you know, the changing of the guard. Now you know, it's Hollywood, it's 1991. It's Rip Magazine. Now, Rip Magazine, I believe, was owned by Flint, Larry Flint, from the magazine Hustler, the adult men's magazine, one of the most hardcore magazines there was. So you knew this was going to be a party, right? And this was their yearly anniversary party or whatever it was. But we went to this. And also the band Thunder was on the bill. And I believe they opened the show. And, Thunder was very much from that old school kind of hairband cloth. Now, I think they're an English band. I don't know that much about them, but the irony of this is this many, many years later, I heard on Hair Nation on XM radio, which I like to listen to every now and then. It takes me back to those times. I just immediately start, thinking about, the Sunset Strip. But Thunder had that song, Dirty Love. And I heard that on Hair Nation. And I was like, man, this is a really good song. It is a really well-written, well-constructed song. There's no fluff. There's no shreddy guitar solo. It's just good old-fashioned rock and roll about a woman that just don't do right by her man. And it's such a fitting song for that time period. I don't want your dirty love. It's very fitting. Let's just put it that way. Girls trying to keep a girl true. Everybody was out for themselves back in those days. And if they could, have a dalliance with a rock star while you're not looking, it was going to happen, and there was nothing you could do about it. But, so we go down to the Palladium. We've got our free tickets. I know it was me and Greg, our bass player, because he would get the call into the hotline and they'd say, hey, you guys want free tickets tonight? Yeah, we want free tickets. Who's playing? Oh, Spinal Tap's playing? Dude. So we probably got our obligatory 12-pack of Coors beer, and we get in our car, drive down to Hollywood and find a free parking spot somewhere, and go over to the Palladium, which was a big concrete kind of slab, kind of open. I remember not being any seats. It felt like it was just like a big room. Now, maybe I'm wrong and there were chairs there, but I remember standing that whole time and, seeing Thunder come out. And like I said, they had a couple hits at the time. They were, maybe one of the last of those kind of hair bands. But something weird, a Teutonic shift happened halfway through their set. At first, everybody was kind of digging their set. And at some point, the crowd halfway through their set started turning on them. And they started booing them and flipping them off. And it was weird. It was kind of like, what's going on? These guys sound all right. Like, why is the crowd like shifting so much? Why? What is going on here? This is like a tectonic plate shift. And here's a good solid band with a good bluesy, long-haired singer, and it's like, man, this is the winning formula, right? This is the winning formula. But halfway through, everybody's booing them. They're flipping them off, and Thunder, they finished their set, and they, flipped the crowd back off and, walked off the stage. And it was kind of like, man, that was weird. Like, why is everybody turning on these poor guys? And I don't remember the sequence of bands that played. I think Pearl Jam maybe was next, and they were kind of forgettable for me. I never really was a huge Pearl Jam fan. The singer, to me, sounds like he's got singing with a mouthful of marbles. And, the guitar playing, the lead guy, he sounds like a Hendrix kind of guy to me. Plays a Strat. And he's okay. It was nothing that anybody that could play that style couldn't pull off. So it was nothing new. And it was nothing particularly amazing about it, but they did their thing. And I can't remember if I think Alice in Chains was next. And I remember just the vibe, very, very dark vibe. Man in the Box. I remember hearing that song and seeing it on MTV. And but it's not that much different than hairband music. I mean, Man in the Box, yeah, it has a darker edge to it, but it's still crunchy, loud guitars. Still most of the guys in Alice in Chains, they still had their long hair, and there's still guitar solos. I mean, dude, you could argue that, and obviously, now we know Alice in Chains was essentially a hair band before. But, they were intense, and that singer, he just kind of stays in one place and just creates this eerie vibe. Powerful voice, man. Very powerful. But it wasn't something like the whole vibe of the night. Normally you think you go into a concert, and we would try to talk to girls, and we would try to, get a beer, and we'd run into people that we knew in other bands. I don't remember any of the Sunset Strip bands that were there, but I'm sure there were guys from there. But man, this was a big, big concert. I mean, you figure all these bands on that bill. And these were young bands at the time. These were young bands on the verge of just becoming huge. So Alice in Chains does their set. And I can't remember I think Spinal Tap was next. I'm not sure. If you were at that show, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. But man, I was so psyched to see Spinal Tap and hear Big Bottoms and Tonight I'm Gonna Rock Ya and all those ridiculous songs that they had. And, they were, if you think about it, Spinal Tap, that's an ode to old school metal. And, sort of a tip of the hat to the old school in the middle of this. Essentially, besides Thunder, it was essentially a grunge fest. And, Spinal Tap, you can't, I guess somebody said Joe Satriani was on bass. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right to me. If I remember correctly, it was all the guys in Spinal Tap, and I don't remember if who they had on drums, if it was the guy from the movie or not. I don't know if there's any footage of this show. I'll have to look. But, you know, back in those days, we didn't have cell phones with amazing video cameras. So, man, a lot of things happen with no actual visual proof. I read somewhere somebody said Joe Satriani on bass. Maybe he came out for Big Bottoms. And, you know, and because that song, everybody plays bass on it. So Spinal Tap does their show, and I think Soundgarden was last. And man, they just came out and just floored the place. Man, Chris Cornell. That's the difference between Chris Cornell and Lane Staley is Chris Cornell is a performer in addition to a powerhouse vocalist. So he's moving more, and that long mane of hair, and just he's wearing like shorts and like no shirt, and man, he's just commanding the stage. It's undeniable. Now, while you know none of the guitar players in any of those bands were they weren't the George Lynch's and the Randy Rhoads and the Eddie Van Halen. There was no like inventive lead playing. You could argue that, Alice in Chains or Pearl Jam or Soundgarden guitar solos were pretty much wank. They're kind of like wank, meaning there's no melody. It's kind of just pentatonic, emoting. Not very precise, maybe more, just kind of playing whatever they felt at the time. So there was none of those hair bands, essentially. Thunder was the one exception, and Spinal Tap being sort of a humorous nod to the past. This concert was the launch of grunge in Hollywood. As far as I know, I never saw any of those bands play the Strip. And, we really had no idea, no clue, that didn't put together the fact that, wait a minute, these bands are all from the same place. And now we're here in Hollywood, and these guys are getting launched out to the world, and we're here, and man, nothing was going to happen for us. I can remember going into a studio and they're saying, we'd like to sign you guys to a development deal, but you guys are a hair band, so we're not sure we can get you placed with anybody. I was like, hair band? I never even really heard that phrase. I just figured we were a band and we grew our hair long because that's what chicks dug. In Hollywood, if you didn't have long hair and the right clothes on, it wasn't going to happen for you, bro. So, conform or be cast out. And, if you're a young man, you want the attention of the females. So you're gonna comb your hair in whatever style, whether it's a 50s ducktail with a pompadour, or it's a 60s shag, or a 60s hippie do, or 70s wearing the right jeans and the right aviator shades, and the 80s pulling out the hairspray and the spandex and the bracelets and hoop earrings or whatever it took. You were going to do whatever it took to fit in. But it was the changing of the guards, 1991, at that RIP magazine party. And I left feeling that. I left that party going, that was a different experience than going to a typical hairband show where it's like half of the people in the audience are women and, scantily clad and their hair teased up and tons of makeup. No, this was a crowd of mostly dudes, And it was just a complete different vibe of the whole night that I saw the launch of grunge.